Why is everyone so fragile? You're mad that someone made a game with AI. You're mad that someone updated a JS library. You're mad that someone made Doom with TypeScript. I'm mad that everyone's mad about these things. I have a lot of feelings on this one. It's a thing I've seen a lot of too. Feels like engineering is in this unique place where there is more progress than ever, but there's also more frustration about that progress. And it's unbelievable to me. The sheer levels of, I don't even know what to call it, just disdain I've been seeing from developers who don't like where things are going. Used to be something I would spend a lot of time thinking about and finding ways to solve. Like, how can we convince these developers that these things are good and that their frustrations are misplaced? Over time, my perspective has shifted, and I am much more aligned with what Trash is saying here. I think engineers as a whole have gotten quite fragile. I want to talk about what this means. But since I'm about to talk a lot of shit on engineers, there's a good chance none of them will ever hire me again. So let's pay some bills really quick and then we'll get back to it. Today's sponsor is a little bit different. I want to tell you a story about a mistake I made. I love building really big modular things in my serverless scalable ways. As such, there's a lot of products that I just don't think are for me. When things get too combined and they provide too many different features, I tend to assume it's not going to do what I need it to well and move on from it. One of those businesses is today's sponsor, Convex. And the reason I'm opening like this is I want to make sure you guys don't make the same mistake that I made. I assumed when I read the code and I saw what you could do with Convex, that it was built for people who are starting from scratch on a brand new application that they're working on as a side project. And I was so wrong that I feel bad about it. The amount of time and energy and honestly probably customers that I have lost because I was hesitant to try Convex 2 to 3 years ago horrifies me. The fact that I took Tanner Lindsley and WebDev Cody and a sponsor deal for me to even give them a real shot is pathetic. I screwed up. I was wrong. And I am so happy that I've made the move to Convex because it's made our lives significantly easier for T3 chat. Sure, we had an outage, but most of that was my fault. And the tiny, tiny bit of it that was theirs, they documented the hell out of and did a great public postmortem. This is a company that passes Sam Lambert from PlanetScale's sniff test for knowing databases well. They really get it. They're not just some fun thing for side projects. They're a very, very legitimate platform for building quality applications using TypeScript. If you want to see how simple it is to use, go look at the code for the T3 Clonathon. I used it heavily there, and it made it so I could vibe code the whole thing out in like an hour. It's really impressive. But just take my word for it. If you've seen Convex and assumed it wasn't for you because you're building legit, powerful, big user software, you're making the same mistake that I made for multiple years, and I immensely regret. Convex is sponsoring this video, but they've told me nothing about what to say, so I want to take the opportunity to be honest with you guys, because I don't want more people making the mistake I made. If you haven't given them a shot yet, you really should. Check them out today at soydev.link/convex. Why are engineers so fragile? This will be a fun one. There's a lot of layers to this one. Oh shit, Trash is here. Thanks for stopping by, man. Thanks for inspiring. This has been on my list to do for a while. It was a very good tweet, and I have a lot of feelings. So we need to start talking about normal curves. If somehow you're watching this, you're not familiar with normal curves, it's a pretty useful concept for how capabilities of things are distributed. There is the median, which is the thing right in the middle, the average, so to speak. I know median and average are different. You get what I'm saying. And then as you go further and further from the norm, those distant points become more and more rare and unique. Someone who is way worse than average is similarly rare to someone who's way better than average. We've all seen the normal curve meme, but we need to talk about what this means for developers. A fun mental exercise that I learned to do when I was very young that has haunted me since. You guys have probably done this one with me before. Imagine a perfectly down the middle quality engineer. Someone who is as average and median, middle of the road as possible. Person who you know isn't going to go excitedly learn a new technology, but you also know will write an if statement correctly without having to Google search for it. They might have to Google search for some other syntax, but the core fundamentals they probably know well enough. Your bog standard average engineer. Just picture this perfectly middle person. Half of engineers are worse at coding than that person. Not exactly 50%, but it's 49.9999. You get the idea. Very close to the majority of engineers are below average because that's how averages work. Thankfully, this also means half are better, but they're not a lot better. There are very few engineers that are significantly better than that average engineer, and there's a lot of engineers who are meaningfully worse. The myth of the 1x engineer, if you will. In the middle here, we can imagine the 1x engineer right in the middle. You go down, you get to the 10x, and as you go the other way, you get to the 0.1x. This is the nature of engineering, but it's also the nature of something else that's important. If we go to my YouTube analytics, which give me 1 sec to make sure I don't leak things I don't want to. Oh, yeah, my favorite bug. Here, I mentioned this before. See how it says stream finished when the stream's not finished? That's because it cached the wrong state, and then it catches up and figures out what it's supposed to actually be showing. Let's look at some recent videos. This one, my thoughts on vibe coding. Nearly 50,000 views. It's over that, but this number's delayed. 284 comments. That's roughly my usual ratio of comments to views. If we do that ratio out quick, 284 divided by 49,000, that's 0.6% roughly. So we do it the math for Theo's comment section. Around 0.6% of viewers leave comments. It's actually quite a bit worse than this because any one person will often leave multiple comments. And I would estimate that greater than 90% of YouTube comments are left by less than 0.1% of viewers. This is from like very rudimentary numbers I've run on my side. The vast majority of YouTube comments are left by a very, very small percentage of people. The ratio here is insane. And this was a hard thing for me to digest as a YouTuber because I would talk to people about my videos and they'd be like, yeah, that was a really good one. I learned a lot from it. But then I would look at the comment section and it was a mix of porn bots and people flaming me for daring to say anything about their beloved tool. What I've since learned is that the people leaving comments are not normal. 0.6% of any group of people is not the normal group. The 0.6% of people leaving comments on my videos are not my average viewer. They think they are here. Those people, without question, imagine themselves as being in this upper echelon. But the more I've talked to the average commenter, and no offense to anyone who's left a comment on this video already. Actually, if you've left one before you got to the end of it, you are probably the person I'm talking about. But if you've left a comment that's kind, asking thoughtful questions, whatever, this isn't about you. This is about the majority of the comments that I get, which come from a minority of the people. They are here, and that is a hard thing for them to accept. It is unnatural to enjoy feeling stupid. So if you encounter something that makes you feel stupid, your instinct is to fight it. Your instinct is to pretend that you're here, because the alternative is that you're here and that makes you feel bad. It's our job as engineers to feel stupid a lot, and it's unnatural for humans to feel stupid a lot. These two facts are what make engineers so insecure. I am very fortunate that I learned how to code after I learned how to skateboard, because you don't get good at skateboarding by sitting in class reading about the history of the skateboard. Y'all might know Giggly. She's a Harvard grad CS student that now has a job in software development. Pretty good at what she does. There's a lot of men on Twitter who are really mad at her existence as a cute girl who went to Harvard, got a degree, and makes money doing code. A Harvard-educated software engineer, without using a search engine, who's considered to be the father of modern information theory. This is somebody who's on one side of the curve and thinks they're on the other. He doesn't want to feel stupid. And since that person looks down on women, a woman being a successful engineer, a woman being more successful than him, makes him feel stupid. So instead, he says something even stupider. People are saying that's bait. I legitimately don't think it is, having read through this person's other posts. And bait used to be believable, but this isn't funny enough to be bait. This is just somebody being incredibly stupid. And I've seen so many things like that in my comment section. You guys have no idea. And there is so much of that. If you just read through someone like Giggly's replies, it's hilarious. It's so common that engineers are sensitive to feeling stupid and find random things to prove that they're actually the legit engineer. And again, to compare to skateboarding, where I came from, if someone finds a way to do a really insane trick, the response isn't, well, you don't know enough about the history of skateboarding to do that. People would do that here and there if you like did a trick that had already been done. But the response when people would talk shit was like, why the fuck are you doing that? This person just did an incredible thing. This 18-year-old just did an unbelievable trick. Why are you mad about it? What the fuck is wrong with you? Because you didn't get good at skateboarding by obsessing over every detail of the history. If you do that, it's fun and exciting. And the people who are the encyclopedias of skateboarding are held in a different way in the skateboarding world. Somebody like Jake Phelps, who used to run Thrasher, knows every detail of the history of skateboarding, who did what trick in what place, and when they did it, and who they were inspired by to do it. He was not a good skateboarder. He just loved skateboarding and the entirety of the world of skateboarding and became the person sharing that knowledge with so many. But that was different. And he didn't view himself as a skater in the traditional sense. He did care deeply and was a skateboarder. He'd skate every day to and from work and around the city. But his knowledge of skateboarding didn't make him a skateboarder. His love of skateboarding made him a skateboarder. The knowledge was just the thing he chose to focus on. The best skateboarders aren't the ones who know everything about skateboarding. It's actually kind of funny how often the best skateboarders don't know shit about skateboarding. They don't watch videos. They don't know anything about it. They just go and do it and then go home to their wife and kids, because you don't get good at skateboarding by learning all the details. You get good at skateboarding by doing it. And whether or not we want to admit this as engineers, it is the exact same thing. If the fundamentals are important to you in your work, you will discover that and learn them. And if the history of information theory is important to your job, I would question if your job is actually software engineering in the first place. But the biggest thing that skateboarding taught me was to love failure. I learned how to do tricks in skateboarding by screwing them up over and over again, by hitting the ground, getting it wrong, getting hurt, and then trying again, and again, until I somehow managed to ride away. And that feeling of riding away was so magical that I would push through those hard things to get there. And slowly I learned to not hate the bails and hate the failed attempts. I learned to love them, because those failed attempts to land a trick, each one got me slightly closer actually riding away. So by the time I moved to software dev and my apps weren't compiling, it didn't feel that bad, because at the very least, I'm not risking breaking my arm every time my app fails to build. So I learned to love that feeling of doing it wrong, of being stupid. I learned to love the failures because they meant I was getting closer to success. That is an awesome thing. And I love somebody has brought this up. Been rock climbing for almost a year now. 99% is a failure. 99% of rock climbing is failure. Yeah, succeeding every time means you're not growing. I was going to make a joke, doesn't fit anymore, of like devs getting into hobbies where if you aren't 100% capable, you're bad, is funny to me. And I kind of think of rock climbing that way. Thankfully, in like rock climbing gyms, you can fall and get back up. It's fine. Rock climbing, an actual giant rock, one failure means you die. And if that's how you work, if that's the thing you do for fun, and you bring that mental model back to software dev, you're never going to do better. You're not going to improve. It's so important to work in ways where you can fail and learn and grow, and learning to love the failures is essential. To be really good, you need to fail 10,000 times. Yes, humans evolved to avoid things that make them feel bad and dumb. Very good thing. Humans steering away from the things that make them feel bad and dumb generally keeps them safer. If you get in the back of a plane and you look around and see all the controls and say, I don't think I'm smart enough to do this, you might save some lives by not doing it. If you look at a wound on your leg after making a dumb mistake and say, hey, I probably shouldn't run into metal things anymore, you'll be safer. If you put your hand on a fire and realize it hurts and you get burned, you'll probably do that less. We are engineered to steer away from things that hurt us and make us feel dumb. But engineering is encouraging us to do things that make us feel dumb. Because of this, engineers are in a weird space where we feel dumb more often than the average person. The average person probably feels stupid maybe a few times a day, not a lot, but some number of them. A great engineer feels dumb a lot of times a day because they're working in things they're not familiar with. They might have changed their mental model for it where they don't feel dumb. It now feels unfamiliar, and that's how they categorize it in their brain and how they process it. But you should at the very least feel unfamiliar regularly as an engineer, or you're not growing and you're probably not doing your job very well. The complexity of the stuff that we do necessitates a level of unfamiliarity due to the wide range of things that exist in our field. And that range is growing constantly. As such, we find interesting ways to cope. If this is the world of engineering, this circle, as we all know, data sets are always circles. World of engineering. There's a lot of different types. I'll specify software engineering. I know you're mad that software engineer isn't a real term or whatever. They can screw off. This circles the world of software engineering. There are lots of different sections in here. You can pretend that it's cut in a linear way. It's not. Let's say we have game dev, web dev, infra, and operating systems. Not meant to be a comprehensive list. Certainly not meant to properly represent the ratios because it would probably look like this nowadays. like at best. If we were to pretend it's only these 4 things, maybe something like that. You get the point though. The problem is if you live in one of these worlds, like within web dev, we have like the React bubble. We have jQuery people that are still insisting that jQuery is the only way to do things, even though the creator of jQuery doesn't do that. We have all the other tools and technologies and things in this one bubble. If you are a really good React dev, I would say best case, you like maybe understand 2/3 of React and the things that it's used for. Like best case, like the best React devs in the world, like the ones who work at Meta, maybe they can fill out like this side of this one bubble here. And then you ask them about how suspense works within React 3 fibers parallel loading, and they look at you like you're an alien speaking a different language. Or what happens sometimes that's even more fun is React's place in this bubble moved. They actually moved down so that it overlaps with Infra a bit with server components. All of a sudden, knowing all of React means you need to know a little bit about Infra too. And it didn't move there, it grew there. So if your understanding of the world is this box, like this is where you currently live and reside, and you fought really hard to know everything in this box, and you're really proud, you're a great engineer, you start doing stupid things like saying, well, game devs don't know what they're talking about. They're not real devs. Operating systems are silly. Just use macOS. Backend is stupid. Why are people still building servers when they can just use Vercel? And at the same time, we have people in the infra world who are expected more and more to build good applications and systems that work well with applications saying, well, I won't have to do that if we just send HTML. React's joke. Game dev, shmame dev, they think things are so hard, just put it in a sync engine and be done with it. Operating systems, I already have Linux. What do you need to change? Stop changing Linux. You're just making my life harder. All of these boxes exist because we live in them. It's the work that we do and the way that we think about things. Somebody brought up the example of asking Dan Abramov about CSS. Very, very amusing. A fun convo I had with Dan way back when server components were happening was about cold starts on Lambda. I had to explain how Lambda worked to Dan Abramov as he was architecting server components because the idea of cold starts wasn't a thing that made sense to him yet. I had to explain all of these things, and that's not because Dan's a bad engineer. It's because he lives in a different box. And that's fine because he's excited to realize the box has many directions he's not going in yet, and he can learn about all of them. But if you live in this box and you're very happy with it, and then the box gets bigger that way, suddenly you went from knowing 50% of React and feeling like you knew 80% of React to knowing like 30%. And that feeling sucks, especially if it goes over a line that you're not comfortable with, because you're fighting to be confident in the thing you already do. You put a lot of work in to build this little box around the part of React that you work in every day. You've also put a lot of time into looking down on the people who aren't doing the thing you're doing, saying that they are lesser in some way, assuming you're insecure enough. We've all built our mental boxes around what we do every day, and as a result, we inherently see what we do as more complex and what other people do as less complex. If you're not familiar with the Dunning-Kruger, as you get into a thing, you start to think you fully understand it and can do it and be successful with it. And then as you learn how complicated the thing actually is, you immediately have your confidence plummet and then slowly build it back up as you learn more and more about the thing. If you know how to engineer within one of the boxes or one of the parts of this world, you don't have to go very far into the others to feel like you know what you're doing. And if you stop there, you'll just look down on those things. So if you're building some infrastructure for some weird project and you put together an HTML like page for it, and then you add like one interaction with a web component, you'll be like, wow, this is so easy. Everybody thinks React is necessary. They must suck. And then you look down on them. And then when you see innovation happening in that space, you look down on it because you currently reside here in your knowledge of the thing. And the people who are smarter than you about it are going to be less confident than you about it because they know more. And the more you know, the less confident you are. There are questions people could ask me about React 3 years ago that I would very confidently answer and might even be correct about. And now I would say, I'm going to go check the source code quick because as much as I think I know, I'm more aware of what I don't. And I'm very aware that my confidence can be misplaced in something as complex as the React ecosystem. All of this combines to people feeling weird. If you spent years building this little knowledge box and you managed to get a job in it and be the React expert at your company because you know a little over half of React, and now React is suddenly moving in a different direction, not leaving the space you're in, but expanding into others, that's going to feel personal. And I've seen devs that I used to look up to being very hostile towards the React team and community for daring to venture into spaces they don't want to be in. One of the cool things React did was enable front-end leaning devs, people who wanted to focus on the browser, CSS, styles, JS, animations, integrations, accessibility, and all of that. They wanted to be a senior developer on the web. And the cool thing React did was, by enabling new levels of complexity in our web applications, they also enabled a need for engineers who could wrangle that complexity and build these gigantic web apps with hundreds, if not thousands, of devs contributing. That meant we had senior to principal level devs doing nothing but managing Webpack configs and package JSONs and reviewing code from other teams and making sure this giant pile of React doesn't crumble. And they did all of that without touching a goddamn server. React was key in enabling developers at enterprise companies building applications for users to have full career paths and trajectories without leaving one side, without leaving web dev. And that was pretty cool. Not because everything's way more complex than it needs to be, but because massive complexity was now possible just within web dev itself, allowing for bigger, better apps, bigger teams to work on those apps, and more knowledge to be necessary, but also existing within that space. But if your excitement came from the fact that you could now be a principal level engineer working in JS and CSS on the web primarily, watching React push you towards the server feels like you're being betrayed. That promise of now you can have a full, fulfilling career in web dev, really should use the infra too. That extra whisper at the end hurts them and makes them feel insecure, because React gave them a security that they could be a principal level engineer and they could make $500K a year and deserve it just writing JavaScript in the browser all day. That being challenged makes them go back to the insecurity they felt when they first were learning web dev. It makes them feel dumb again. And these people might not have felt dumb for a while because they're the best React engineer at their company. When anyone has any problem with React, they're the person they go to ask. And since they are not the 0.6% of people who leave comments, they're not in the Twitter world or in my comment section or in here enough to have great engineers pushing back on them to make them feel dumber. I'm incredibly fortunate that my time at Twitch was almost always surrounded by awesome engineers pushing me to be better and also trying to learn from me as I would go down these deep rabbit holes. And after I left Twitch, I got pulled into the open source community, and I had so many incredible developers from there take me in and give me more to aspire to and people to learn from. People like Jens, who helped build Radix. People like Tanner Lindsley, who built the whole Tan stack in React Query. People like Ryan Carniato, who built Solid, or Fred Schott, who built Astro. These people were so excited to go deep on the details with me, and they were way smarter than me. So I knew that I wasn't the best in the world at this stuff, but I loved it so much that I could hold the conversation with them and keep learning through them. I don't know where I would be if I didn't get to feel stupid every step along the way, if I didn't have that opportunity to keep humbling myself and learning more and more about things like this. It's why I love software. I feel like I can run in any given direction and find more to learn the further I go. And that's awesome. I'm looking for growth, not comfort. Most people don't, though. Growth versus comfort is probably the biggest issue that we have here. Most people hit a point in their life where they don't want to keep improving and growing. They are happy with where they're at, and they are wanting things to slow down. Maybe they have a family and kids. Maybe they are saving up for their retirement fund so they can go have a farm or do some other job. They might have spent their whole career up until that point learning new things, trying new tools, pushing new solutions, challenging themselves to improve and be better. But most people don't do that. And even the ones who do, for the most part, eventually stop. They slow down. There are very few people who consistently throughout the entirety of their lives are challenging themselves to do new things, pushing themselves to do things they're unfamiliar with and improve every day. And that makes me sad because at the very least, I hope that I will be continuing to improve for as long as I'm on this goddamn earth. I want to challenge myself and learn new things and try new stuff. That's why this YouTube channel exists. Not because I failed to get a job in engineering, quite the opposite. I had too many opportunities in engineering, but all of them were surrounded by people who I didn't really think I could learn from. And I was tired of being the only person who cared about technologies and new solutions and new frameworks and stuff. So I made this channel to just get it out of my system and talk about these things. I really wanted to. And then it blew up almost immediately because a lot of y'all want the same thing. My average viewer is not somebody who is in one of these boxes that's really insecure about the box getting bigger or feels really bad when someone tells about something that is in a different place. If someone joins your team and their knowledge is here and your knowledge is here, The instinct for many people is to talk shit on this and say, well, that's not a real thing. That's Flutter or that's Vue. No one actually ships that. But the reality is that most of the time, these are just different experiences and different lived realities. Except for Flutter. I've never seen a good Flutter app. But other than that, this is a difference in our experience. And when I look at this and I see somebody who has this knowledge, it excites me. But there's another painful reality with this. If you look too excited about the things you don't know, there are a lot of engineers who will just assume that you are dumb. I had this really bad. Another one of the reasons this channel exists is a story I've hinted at a few times, and I've never found a better place to put it than here. The reason that Linear is responsible for this channel is because they rejected me as one of their first hires when I interviewed there. Why did Linear reject me from working there? When I was going to interview at Linear, I was really excited. I went and watched some talks from the developers at Linear. And one of those talks was all about really performant state management and sync in React back in 2019. I thought that was so cool. And after working at 2 startups and doing some consulting where I was the smart engineer, I really wanted someone I could learn from. And I was so excited to potentially go to Linear so I could learn from these people who were smarter than me, who had more experience than me, and get the opportunity to be in a room full of talented people again, pushing to better themselves and better the things that they're working on. Because I wanted it so badly. I just missed being surrounded with smart people that would push each other to improve. The rejection I got from Linear changed how I think about engineering entirely. Here's the actual email I got. Wanted to circle back from your call with Jory. I wasn't sure if he has communicated feedback to you yet, but unfortunately, they made the tough decision to not move forward. Jory loved your passion and your gaining experience with the right technologies, but overall felt that they need a bit more experience at this time. The problem was that I expressed my excitement to learn from him. I am 100% certain if I had just flexed what I could do, instead of expressing my excitement to learn from him, I would have gotten that job. This was about 4 months before I started my YouTube channel and 2 months before I started my company. It's rare I say a company fumbled me. There are plenty of times where I got a rejection that made sense. I got rejected from Retool, and that one made sense. I was not the right fit for them. Linear fucked up hard with this mistake. They've now hired 20 people to do the job I and one other person could have done for them. And I followed up after too, saying, hey, I feel like there might be a misunderstanding here. I'm not trying to gloat, but I know what the fuck I'm doing. I think this rejection happened because I expressed my excitement about learning from this team. That wasn't because I have to learn because I'm underqualified. I'm excited to have a team of people who know what the fuck they're doing so that I can continue to grow. And I originally was distraught by this because I was very excited about Linear at the time. But after thinking through it a little bit and talking with a couple other people, hell, it was, I think, 2 weeks after this, not even, that Tanner Lindsley, the creator of React Query, asked me to go investigate tRPC for him, which kickstarted the T3 stack in this entire YouTube channel. So it was entirely a fumble on their part. I am amused at the level of fumble that happened there. But the fact that the industry had rejected my excitement and energy and my desire to grow meant I had to find somewhere else for it. If I couldn't get a job where my excitement to learn was going to keep me moving forward, then I needed to find a place where I could do it instead. And that's why I say this. I needed a place to have these conversations, to talk about these things I was excited about. And I could say almost certainly, if Jory didn't fuck up his interview with me, that my channel might not exist. And the engineers he hires today might not be as good because they're all watching my goddamn YouTube channel. I would guarantee the 20 people he hired instead of me all watch my channel to keep up, and a decent number of them are probably watching this too. Hi, your boss sucks at hiring. I hope that doesn't affect you in your career. Yeah. The thing that took me much longer to realize is that part of why I didn't get this opportunity was insecurity. The realization that a spunky, excited kid could keep up with them was not something they wanted to process yet. So instead of processing it, they rejected me because that was easier. It was way easier. And I get it. Accepting that some 20-something-year-old kid that just left Twitch knows what they're doing really well is hard. And if you can flip it in your head, your brain will always take the easiest path by default. And since your brain doesn't want to feel dumb, if it's ever handed a path that gives you an easy out, you will naturally take it. On YouTube, I see this a lot with people trying to find success and get views. And they will constantly blame the algorithm or the way things are being recommended or a change to the app as the reason they're not finding success. If a developer is struggling to get hired, they'll blame the state of the hiring world. They'll blame the technical interview process. They'll blame the frameworks for changing all the time and not recognizing the value in their toolkit from 10 years ago instead of improving. People like to find ways to excuse their lack of success, and it's much easier to do that than to push through it. And I know a lot of YouTubers feel strongly about this because I accidentally outgrew most of them in a month. It is what it is, and I get why people feel that way because it doesn't feel good to see someone finding success with something you struggled with. So instead of recognizing your opportunity to grow, it is our nature. It is the way our brains work to do the opposite, to find an easy out, an excuse. And brains love excuses. I almost just wrapped this up without talking about artificial intelligence. And I honestly think I can make most of the points I need to without talking about AI. But AI represents a very painful moment for a lot of these insecure devs. Because if you're one of those devs that's in like the lower quadrants here, you're one of the devs that isn't doing particularly well and is on the lower end, AI programming is probably around here in terms of the quality. Like it can put out better code than at least 20% of engineers, I would guess. Depends on the task and a lot of other things, but it's not quite like an average experienced engineer. But it's far along enough that the people in this space, be it the ones who are just learning how to code or the ones who have refused to learn anything new for 10 years, these people feel awful right now because the writing's on the wall for them. The wall being the skill level for the AI. Being on the other side of the AI skill wall is very painful. And it makes you feel like you've just wasted a ton of time and energy and effort and everything that you've spent your life on. And considering that a lot of us were promised very early, just learn to code. Google is the best place in the world to work. Everyone just Google searches everything all the time. Great engineers barely even know what they're doing. You guys might remember this take. These happened all the time. This was Prime's favorite thing to shit on. That the people saying the whole just Google everything, no one knows what they're doing stuff are bad. There's two sides to this one. On one hand, if you're Google searching everything every day and you're doing the same Google searches regularly, you're not actually growing and you're not actually a good engineer and you are going to be replaced with AI. On the other hand, if you're constantly dipping your feet in different things, you're constantly challenging yourself in ways where you're playing with things you've never heard of before, you're solving a problem in a way that's complex enough that you're trying a new technology that requires you to learn all these other different new things, then you are Google searching a lot. There's a good IQ meme of this one for sure, the bell curve meme, where on the left side, it's just Google search everything because they don't know what they're doing. On the right side, it's just Google search everything because they're doing such hard stuff and trying new things all the time. And then in the middle, it's like, wait, no, if you're Google searching, you don't know what you're doing. The midwit meme is very real here of the people in the middle insisting that if you Google search, you're bad. The people on the right saying, no, I'm doing different things every day. I'm experimenting with different technologies and solutions and challenging myself consistently. I have to keep learning. I need to keep Googling. And then people who don't know what the fuck they're doing at all see that and are like, oh, well, if a great engineer is Googling all the time, then it's okay that I am too, and just never develop the skill. And that sucks. That's just not good. And a lot of people were sold this promise. A lot of people were told, if you go to this programming boot camp for 3 months, you'll make $100,000 a year. And that was encouraged because Google was tired of paying people $200,000 a year. So they went ham with all of this marketing, all of this money spent on different education programs, Google Summer of Code, all these things, all of the dev tools they've open sourced and everything too. Google's goal has always been to lower the cost of the average engineer. And AI is helping them accelerate that. And the victim of that is the below average engineer. And they, for the first time, arguably, have right to be scared because the job of the mediocre engineer is dying very quickly. The engineers that refuse to learn React could get by maintaining legacy systems for the last decade, but those same engineers are going to have their system replaced with some AI-generated vibe-coded slop, and they're going to be so insecure about it that it becomes the rest of the world's problem. AI is just going to make this all happen faster. It was happening, but yeah, now it's just going to go crazy. I feel bad for the devs that are below average, that are trying to learn and improve, because they're going to get grouped in with these people that have not learned or improved in 10 years because they're both on the same side of the line. It's easier than ever to learn and grow, and technologies are changing fast enough that you have so much opportunity if you're willing to put the work in and take it, and you're willing to feel dumb and get excited about the things you can learn. But if you haven't learned anything in 10 years, the only reason you got by was you were maintaining a code base nobody wanted to touch for 10 years. AI doesn't mind touching an ancient code base, and it certainly doesn't mind replacing it either. This does hurt junior engineers, and I have a whole video about the plight of the junior engineer coming soon. It's probably up before this one even is, knowing what the schedule looks like. But yeah, the insecurity around AI was absurd doomerist bullshit until it wasn't. Now, the fact that code is more disposable means that people who write disposable code are going to have more of it thrown away. The reality of the last decade has been that code is so expensive that if you had a bunch of code written by somebody in like this range, previously, you would pay someone talented to come in and maintain this code. If somebody came in that was a way better dev and you handed them this pile of code written by shit devs, if they said, that's not tenable, I'm going to rewrite this, they would be laughed at or fired. Now, by the time they've said it, they also have an AI-generated starting point that's at least as good as the shit show that they were hired to maintain. The giant piles of garbage code written by garbage engineers that are being maintained indefinitely because replacing it's too expensive and hard to risk, that's over now. That era is done. Code is more disposable than it's ever been. So if the code you wrote deserves to be thrown away, you're no longer getting a free pass. The true inclusivity in software engineering was never about DEI. It was about including bad engineers and letting their code ship to production because there were so few engineers, we needed whatever code we can get. And that's over. That era is done. To go back to the core point, why are engineers fragile? I think there's a few key pieces that led to us being the way we are. 1, jobs require us to feel dumb. 2, it's human nature to fight back when you feel dumb. 3, the breadth of the dev world is insane. There's always more to learn, and it's always changing. And we are always pursuing better ways to do things in dev. Doesn't mean you have to keep up, but it means someone is. And if you're not as far along as they are, which makes you feel bad. And then there is the tribal nature of it all. Since we have our tribes, we have our little bubbles within our little sections, it's very easy for us to look down on the people outside of our section on here. And this happens in almost every industry. The FBI looks down on the police, and the police look down on FBI. Street chefs get frustrated with Michelin star chefs, and Michelin star chefs think the street chefs have no idea what they're doing. When you live in different bubbles within an industry, it's easy to not understand the thing on the other side and to start looking down on it as a result. I even experienced that as a YouTuber. I noticed the moment where my audience stopped seeing me as the open source developer who happens to have a YouTube channel and instead saw me as the YouTuber who pretends he knows how to write code. I watched that shift happen, and it happened right around 100,000 subscribers for me. Humans are tribal by nature, and if being tribal allows them to deal with these other parts more easily, they will. And as a result of that, there's a lot of people who talk a lot of shit about things that they don't really know anything about. But there's one really important piece to remember about all of this. The thing I started with. The rude comments that inspired all of this. The people being stupid on Twitter about AI game generation. The people who are leaving rude comments on this very video right now. They are not average. They are certainly not above average. The vast majority of those people are a tiny little blip right here. And this tiny little blip is very, very loud, very, very annoying. But this blip is responsible for the majority of the negativity on the internet. It's the classic loud minority thing, as chat's already pointing out, but it goes further because the majority of people aren't saying anything at all. It's not just the loudness and the reach of the message, it's the messages in the first place. The average anime profile picture shitposter on Twitter posts 100 times more than actual developers do. The sheer volume of things coming from these insecure people is massive because it's what they're doing instead of learning or shipping or improving the things that they do. The people who make this much noise and complain this often aren't shipping shit. They don't do anything. They just complain all day. And they do not represent engineering. It's annoying to think that the negativity towards React isn't a big deal because we see it everywhere. But the people who are shilling it are a very, very, very small portion of the users of React. The average React developer doesn't even have a Twitter account, much less if they do, they're probably not talking about React on it very much. I didn't think this YouTube channel would have any viewers at all because I didn't think many people wanted to watch videos about software dev. And I was wrong. There's way more than I expected, but it's still like way less than a 10th of engineers, probably closer to a 50th. Those engineers will be better than average and help push their teams to be better too. They might send one of my videos to a teammate, but the people who enjoy consuming this content are not average. And the people who like shitting on this content are even less than average. They're very, very small portion of the group. And when you're seeing all of this negativity on the internet, I encourage that you take some time to talk to people in the real world. Find a developer who isn't online, but talks about these things at work and does it for a living. See how they feel first before being so confident that everyone hates React and everyone's moving away. Because when you talk to real developers, you'll realize things are not what you might think they are in your little bubble. I even run into this here because I'm in SF. So we are a bubble of people who care a hell of a lot more than average. And if I'm not careful and I don't talk to developers outside of this bubble whenever I have the opportunity, then I will lose touch too. I'm just obsessive and nerdy about these things. I would be looking into the newest framework releases with or without my YouTube channel. I just am lucky to have found a way to healthily engage, continue to push myself to learn and grow and try new things, but also profit from it, run a team on it, and benefit from doing this instead of it being a useless side quest I go on. The people on the other side are trying to justify not doing it, trying to justify refusing to improve, trying to feel better about the fact that they haven't learned anything in 10 plus years. It's a hell of a lot easier to talk shit on React than it is to learn it. And humans will always take the path of least resistance without a little bit of motivation to go the other way. So the next time you see an engineer saying something fragile and stupid, just think to yourself, is the alternative easier or harder? Is them understanding the thing an easier path for them, or is it a harder path for them? And if the answer is it's an easier path, that's probably why they're doing it. Not because the thing they're talking about is actually bad, simply because it's easier to talk shit than it is to learn the thing. And then go apply this to my take on Flutter and you'll understand the depth of my hatred for it. I think I've made my points. Engineers are fragile. There's reasons why. And the ones that are the most fragile are the ones that make the most noise. We should start ignoring them. People who build actual things are who we should learn from. And we should take the time to learn from the engineers who aren't posting all the time, but are actually shipping things every day. Let me know what you guys think about this one and have fun in this comment section. Until next time, keep flaming me.